So hello and welcome to another episode of Interviews with Innovators. While attending the Pennsylvania State Beekeepers Association at State College, I happened to meet George and David, and before you know it, I was learning about a new way to practice swarm reduction without all the heavy lifting required when following the familiar Demaree method. I hope you'll stick around and listen to their story and learn with me about the many benefits of the Keepers Hive. I'm Frederick Dunn, and this is the way to be. So, first of all, I want to thank everybody for chiming in and watching another interview with experts. We have a really special program, and as you can see, David and George are both here tonight. And I'm going to ask you guys to introduce yourselves. Tell us, first of all, who you are, where you are now, and what you're doing. Start with David.
Oh, okay. My name's Dave. I'm the co-founder of the Keepers Hive along with George. We have a third partner who's not here, Nat. Shout out to Nat. But yeah, we're here in Chester County, Pennsylvania, outside of Philly, and yeah, we're excited to talk to you tonight. George has been working on this for a long time, so we're happy to have the opportunity.
Great,
George.
Thanks, David. George.
Yeah, I'm George Datto, one of the co-inventors of the Keepers Hive. Been at this for about 7 years now. My role on the team is basically I'm the expert beekeeper, sort of, the one managing most of the hives and sort of looking at it from that perspective of how the bees are performing in the hive and how the hive is helping the beekeeper.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so, and people should probably know, we met at the Pennsylvania conference. So we're part of the same state Beekeepers Association. So it was pure coincidence on my part that I walked in and saw your hive configuration, which is very unique. And I think that a lot of people are going to see and learn a lot more about it in the coming months. And then, of course, hopefully in the spring. Do you guys have any plans so far to be at the conference in Louisville, Kentucky in January?
Yeah, we're gonna apply tomorrow, I think, to go. So that's the current plan. We're hoping that by that point we have a fair amount of interest and we can sort of keep that momentum going into the Kickstarter, or I should say Indiegogo. Sorry, but yeah, crowdfunding.
Okay,
Yeah,
so you do.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, we're hoping that, with going to that, we can sort of get a lot of exposure to a lot of beekeepers, so we know we're going to be there and just sort of continue to build interest up to our crowdfunding, which will be in February.
Okay, so you do have a plan for crowdfunding. Do you have an exact start date for that, or that's to be announced?
February 1st is our tentative start date, but we're thinking just
Okay.
right into March.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for those who are watching this or listening on podcasts through iHeartRadio or whatever podcast you're choosing, you'll find that information in the description of the podcast or in the video description below, and those will be updated as we have more information on that. So that's fantastic. But before we get into the hive itself, let's talk about your background in beekeeping. Who wants to go first?
You want to do that one first?
No, George better go first. Yeah, I'll be brief. I don't have much of a background in beekeeping.
Okay.
The way that I got connected to these guys was basically through Nat, who isn't here. But I grew up with Nat. I know his son. We're best friends. Yeah, so I had heard about this hive project from him years ago, and then sort of it came up again last year. And I was like, hey, how's that going? I have a background in operations and marketing. So I was kind of like, what's up with the Hive project? I know you guys, it sounded really promising. I know you guys have been doing a lot with it. And George and Nat were basically like, right now we're kind of stalled. We need some help taking it to market. And I kind of met with them. We talked a fair amount about different plans and ways to approach it. And I got familiar with the product. And obviously since then, I've done my best to learn as much as I possibly can about beekeeping, and I like to think that I know a decent amount. But really, I'm really here to just sort of support Nat and George in their journey mission to make this thing just an actual product that people can buy, because I think like you said, hopefully it does have a lot of value, and they've put a lot of work into it. So that's really my place in this. But like George said, he's really the expert beekeeper of the crew. Nat keeps bees, but George is the one with, I would say, the most impressive beekeeping credentials.
Let's stick with you for a second, David.
Okay.
Now that you're this far along and getting involved, are you going to be more hands-on in the apiary, or you're just going to stick with marketing?
No, I mean, well, really, to be honest, yeah, no, I would love to. I think I live in Philadelphia right now, but so I think there are technically no rules about whether or not. Well, I mean, I obviously have to register it with the state, but I think the city doesn't have a rule about whether or not you can have a beehive. But the truth is that I don't think my girlfriend would appreciate me having a hive in the backyard just because she'll get stung while I'm out there trying to flip burgers and stuff. But no, I mean, I would love to, and I've spent a lot of time at George's apiaries, and I'm over here quite a bit, and traveling around with him, looking at the bees, and haven't gotten stung yet. Knock on the wood.
Dave's the cameraman for these for the YouTube videos.
So. Okay, yeah, I saw the one where one of you had a bee suit and one did not.
Yeah,
so
George.
David was protected. George was out there.
I'm a little bit of a cowboy when it comes to bee suits sometimes, but we can go into that in more detail if you'd like.
Yeah, well, you get to know your own bees. Okay, so let's move on to you, George. You've been in research and development with this hive for over 7 years, right?
Right. So I've been. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, talk to me about your beginning with bees, and at what point did you decide that you really need to do something different when it comes to hive configurations?
Sure. So I've been beekeeping for 12 years. Basically started out like most beekeepers with a handful of hives in the backyard. And my initial teacher or mentor is very big Demaree swarm control method on his hive. So he manages a lot of hives. So I saw a lot of Demaree swarm control being done, and I saw the amount of work needed to do that. But I also saw the effectiveness of that swarm control. So I was like, there's got to be a way that we can achieve the benefits of the Demaree, but eliminate the disturbance caused to the hive when doing it and all the lifting necessary. So that's kind of when the spark kind of got into my brain, saying like, and I know people have tried different ways to do a vertically oriented hive that decreases lifting, but that's what sort of drove it, understanding the Demaree and seeing the challenges with it. And since then, I've retired, and through retirement, you have a lot, I don't know, free time, but now I'm up to 70 hives. And I'm also I'm a honey producer now. So I have another company that does honey and mead. So that's so I'm all in on this now. So I understand it from the backyard beekeeping perspective. I sort of understand it from the honey producer side point. Yet I'm an innovator. I'm a what if we could do this differently, or what if we could do that differently. So that's kind of my short journey into beekeeping over the last 12 years.
Yeah, George isn't ever short on ideas, I would say.
Yeah, I'm the idea generator of the team. If you're short of an idea,
right?
I can generate one.
So you said you retired. What did you retire from?
I was an academic pediatrician. So I was
what?
An academic medical center as a pediatrician. Yes.
You're a physician?
Of course, yes.
For Pete's sakes.
And
no, that's great. You know what that is? That's street credibility.
It's caring, right?
There.
I'm just caring for bees instead of kids now.
You just upped your stock in a single credential right there. As far as
I don't say very much because I'm not sure how it connects, right?
Don't toot his horn. Yeah, don't.
It does.
I'm not into that, Fred. I don't, but I did a lot. I did part of my job in academic medicine was research, so that sort of thought process of, what's the question, what's the methods, what's the outcome, what's the, what's the analysis that you're going to conduct. So it's that continuing cycle of trying to do improvement on what is known. So some of that training when I was as a doc surely has helped me continue to push this hive design forward for sure. And I don't quit. Docs don't quit. I don't quit. It's been 7 years. So,
No, I agree. Quitters never win and winners never quit.
Correct. So keep going, right?
Yeah. And so, David, what were you doing before this lightning struck and you decided that bees and beehives are going to be something you're going to get involved with too?
Well, right now I'm still working with an ad agency that a friend of mine started here in Philly. But before that, I lived in New York City for a while, actually. I worked for a photo booth startup, and that's sort of where, and I kind
Photo
of,
booth startup. We talking
yeah,
about weddings and parties? What do you?
yeah, a little bit more to it than that. Like, so this was like around 2011, like when Instagram was first becoming a thing. And some friends of mine basically invented one of the first, I think it was the first GIF booth. So it took 4 photos, animated a GIF, and let you share it on social media, right?
Yeah,
And so it became, very popular with some large companies that were like basically sponsoring events like music festivals, fashion shows, that type of thing, concerts. So it was more of like a digital marketing tool, I would say, for those brands. And
okay,
I started with them when it was very small, and rode that wave all the way up until the pandemic, which obviously put a big halt on
sure,
in-person events.
yeah,
But that was sort of when I made some life choices and ended up moving back to this area after some years up there. But yeah, so I kind of got I mean, I wore a lot of hats at that company.
mhm.
It saw it go through a lot of phases and, worked through a lot of different challenges. And I think that was part of what sort of made me feel confident in going to Nat and George and saying, like, I think I can help you guys.
Yeah, because that was my next question. What did you glean from that that you think is really going to be your strongest suit now with the Keepers Hive?
I think,
So, did you
yeah,
do the logo, by the way?
our company, the ad agency I work for now did 8 a.m. Creative. Yeah, they helped with the
Okay,
logo and some of the branding. Yeah. So
You like the logo?
I do. Yeah.
I do
Well,
too.
once you know what it is, it makes sense. You look
yeah,
at it right away. Yeah, I mean, logos are simple, they're memorable, they leave an impact. I used to teach art and design for business, so yeah, I think it's a nice, clean logo. I think I was surprised to see actually how far along you guys were with that, given that you haven't even hit your fundraiser campaign yet. Seventh year of development, though, is really valuable in my opinion because you've been doing hands-on practical testing and modifications for 7 seasons with bees, and I think that that's very valuable before you bring something to all the viewers, backyard beekeepers, and get people to consider, of course, using their strongest vote, which is their money, of course. So
You
we're going
know,
to move on. Go
it's
ahead.
important to us to put out a product that we know does what we say it's going to do. And
Yeah.
bees are not the easiest thing to. You need to put several hives over several, mini hives over several seasons to sort of know the nuances of what you need to tweak and what works. It's not 1 or 2 hives over one season, and the tough thing is, well, in Pennsylvania, the season's relatively short. So you spend you spend most of your year planning and thinking about what modifications you're going to make for the prototype. And then you basically have March, April, May, June to see, what happens when the bees are exploding in the spring in the hive. So it's a
Correct.
lot of
Yeah.
it's a lot of planning, and that's what makes that's why it's been 7 years, for
Right.
sure, trying to make sure it does what we say it's going to do.
Correct. And you did mention that you've got a number of these hives out and about in other apiaries and under management from other beekeepers. Is that correct?
Yeah, about 2 years ago, I had 20 beta testers that we recruited, and largely in this area, and they basically got a hive and put bees in it, and then gave me. They filled out a monthly questionnaire, asking a series of questions, and I collected that information. I made some site visits off to some of the people, and that was very helpful and sort of understanding how people were using it. What things were still a struggle, and I thought it was pretty good at that point. But even after that, we made some additional changes to the structure and design of the hive so people would have an easier time using it, because if it's easier to use, then good things are
Oh,
going to
yeah.
happen.
Can you
Yeah.
give me an example of some surprise feedback that you hadn't anticipated that modified your direction with some component?
Sure. The initial roof was a slide roof, so the frame guards and and the roof were one piece, and it slid in and out. And it slid okay. I mean, it worked. It slid in and out. But someone said, well, why don't you hinge the roof? I was like, huh, why don't I? And so my brain started thinking, like, can I deconstruct the roof? Yeah, it's a little bit more pieces, but will it actually make the function better? And that was just one beta tester out of 20 that said, huh, ever think about that? So that was I knew, and it was something that I didn't see. It was a perspective that, it was just one person's view of it, but it was so helpful into sort of saying, yeah, we could modify this. It took a while to figure out how to modify, but it was definitely a change I wasn't expecting, or a feedback I wasn't expecting. So
how did you select your beta testers?
I was president of the Chester County Beekeepers Association at that time, which was 700 members. So I had access to 700 beekeepers, and I was looking for backyard beekeepers because I really knew that my target audience was going to be backyard beekeepers and not necessarily, commercial or sideliner beekeepers. I really wanted people who had some experience, right, but were having the backyard lens on how the hive was working. So and a lot of them were just people that I knew, or I basically sent out an email to the club. I was like, hey, look, I'm looking for beta testers. I'll give you a hive as long as you're willing to give me, fill out a monthly form about, and answer some questions. So that's kind of, and I didn't get everyone's monthly form back, of course, but thank you. Any of the beta testers that are currently using, I thank them often, and I thank them again, because without them, I wouldn't have the confidence to come here and say, well, this thing does what it's supposed to do, right?
Yeah. And so a lot of people, this is the first time they're ever hearing about it. So you do have one sitting right next to you, just to give them a concept idea of kind of a basic configuration of what we're looking at. Would you mind just panning over and showing it here for a minute? And so we're looking at pretty standard gear that's been assembled together and then used. And this is, as we mentioned before, takes the place of the Demaree method, which, by the way, George, you said it right. When it comes to the Demaree method, it's a system that works. I mean, we wouldn't be talking about it today if it weren't a system that worked for swarm control. The reason I personally have always rejected it is because, I'm serious, I just got to be honest, it's because it involves so much box manipulation, lifting of equipment and gear. And what you've really solved is that manipulation and lifting of heavy boxes. So if you would just give us a very basic description of what we're looking at here and the purpose of just the components that you have in that base unit.
So there's a deep nuke over there if you want to grab it.
Yeah, we're going to start at the bottom. So it takes any standard 10-frame bottom board. So you could do screened or solid. I prefer solid bottom boards on these, just because we're going to go over that this is a single brood chamber and the queen can't leave a single brood chamber. So especially early in the season, the brood and the queen are down lower in the hive. Again, if you're a screen bottom board fan, because you like to look at your mite drops or other drops, you can use a the whiteboard in there, or in the winter you can put an extra board underneath there. It really doesn't make a difference, but this is standard equipment, nothing fancy in the bottom board. So what we're doing up here is, again, this is the footprint, the size of a 10-frame deep nuke box. So it's 16 1/4 by 19 7/8, but inside is 8 frames. So this is an 8-frame single deep brood chamber. So there's 8 frames in here. There's a queen excluder here, a 5-frame queen excluder here, and then above is all 5-frame standard nuke boxes. So right now we have a medium, and we have
we call it the exchange box, right? Like this is the spacer box, this is the exchange box,
and then your supers go above.
Yeah.
So this is your spacer box and your Demaree, which is standard in a Demaree, sort of giving space between the queen and where you're moving the brood. This is what we call the exchange box. It's basically a frame exchange that's happening with the Demaree. So you're basically taking, brood frames from down here and moving them up here, leaving the queen down here. enabling the queen to have more room to lay and also decongesting the brood chamber. And then you put however many nuke supers you want up there. But the basic design is basically, it's a hinge roof. Remember, I used to say that the roof's kind of pushed in and out, slid in and out, but now
it's hinged.
So you can see what's also pretty nice is there's a observation window up here. So you're actually looking at the top bars of the 4 of the 8 frames that are in the brood chamber, which is pretty cool because without even taking a box off or doing anything, you can flip the lid and you can say my brood chamber is relatively filled or not filled, because the brood chamber is usually pretty symmetric. So if you have, the first 2 frames are empty, well, you can assume that the 2 frames in here are empty and your brood is about 4 frames, So again, it's just a quick visual look of how populated your brood chamber is, right? So then you basically just remove the observation window. These frame guards sit over the ends of the top bars of the frames. So these sort of sit over the ends and they get removed. And then you can access all 8 of the frames in the brood chamber without removing any of the supers above. So the frames are actually sitting on the box instead of in the box. So it's all standard Langstroth equipment, but in the brood box, the innovation or the sort of the thing that makes this work is that the frames are sitting on top of the box, so they slide on top of the box, and they're not sitting in the rabbet joint that they normally do. So that's that's how it works. So,
and just to remind people, we're also going to show the video that we shot at the conference where you show these details, and we go over all of this again. So I don't want you to have to completely repeat yourself. Plus, we're going to put links to your actual channel. There's your follower board.
So this is a really good concept. Yeah. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Yes, Fred.
So yeah, I mean, that's because you can start with a smaller grouping of frames if you're starting from a split.
How big you want your brood chamber,
Yep.
So so again, you can access what you need to access from the brood chamber without removing anything above. So it's a vertically oriented hive where the lifting basically is minimized now.
Now tell me more about this spacer box. That's a medium nuke. Is there nothing in it?
There's frames in it.
There are frames. So
there are 5 frames in it, yes, medium frames.
So is that a winter resource for the bees? What does that turn into?
So the spacer box is there initially in the beginning of the season as part of the Demaree, right? So you need, in order to have the colony feel like it's not congested, it's helpful when you move brood up into this box that there's physical space between the bees you're moving up and the queen down below. Because if you put this deep right here, you're not really decongesting the brood chamber at all, okay? So it's used there. Now, in the season, the bees think the queen's going to move up into there. So most of the season, those frames are what we call polished. Fred. So the bees sort of put honey and nectar on the outside, but the middle of the frames are generally what they call polished cells because the bees think is going to move up and lay into it, right?
Yeah.
So that will stay polished until later on in the season. And later on in the season, they'll just backfill all those frames. So this will become a harvestable, generally fall honey in this box. And then in the winter, what happens is that this box will generally be backfilled with honey too once the brood hatches out. And then this box gets dropped down. So for winter, I'm going to ask for your help here a little bit. We're gonna undo. So I'd say everything medium is for you because I usually run medium supers above. You can run deep supers above, but usually medium nuke supers above. Everything medium is for you. Everything deep is for the bees, right?
Okay.
So
right.
there's that brood. You're never going to get brood in this medium, right? Assuming that you don't move the queen up or something strange happens up here. Generally, the medium is going to stay brood free, but this is going to have brood in it. Now, once you stop doing the Demaree, which is usually in June, right? Because or wherever you are, when the swarm impulse is sort of finished
Over with, yeah.
You stop the Demaree, but when all these bees hatch out of this, they're going to backfill that with nectar and make that honey. So that's going to, by the time fall runs around, this box is going to be full of honey. So what we do is we end up taking this is harvest. This is for you. Again, anything above the deep exchange box for you, that medium spacer box is for you. And then you basically take the 30 pounds of honey that's in the nuke box and just drop it down.
Okay.
So this is the overwinter configuration. You have 5 deep frames over 8 deep frames.
And now describe, if you would, what goes on top of that nuke.
This?
For your winter configuration, what kind of cover are you putting on there?
I usually, for my winter configuration, I'll usually use a 1.5 inch shim just to have it there, just in case I'm at all concerned that they're running light on feed. And then then your inner cover, right? Then your inner cover. And then I usually move the queen excluder up above the inner cover. And then the insulation board and then the outer cover. Because I don't want to running back and stuff forth through the barn. So the queen excluder usually just stays on top of the stack.
So that's just to keep it convenient for when spring rolls around.
Yeah, right. So the queen excluder will come off. The medium spacer box comes off. The deep exchange box, which is full of honey, drops down, and that's your winter configuration. So you don't have to feed these bees in winter.
Right. Okay. And you did mention some kind of insulation up there?
Yeah, an insulation board usually just goes on the top, just like any hive, right? So I don't run upper entrances on my hives in the winter. So it's closed up top, and it also has like a 1.5 to 2 inch piece of foam insulation board at the top. And then whether or not you're running a migratory or telescoping cover at the top, it doesn't really matter.
And you also demonstrated that you insulate that side piece there that folds over where the roof is.
Yeah, so there'll be a piece of insulation that sits up here too. There's just a foam board insulation that sits there.
Now, my question about that is, when you're putting on insulation for the wintertime, what's prohibiting you from thinking that would benefit them in the summer as well?
Nothing, honestly. So I usually leave my top insulation on year round.
Oh, okay, good.
So I'm trying to build insulation into my telescoping cover. So so it's, again, I'm trying to have less stuff that goes in and out of the shed. So everything on the hive is what I need. So most of my hives have insulation on the top of the hive all year round. The one thing about insulation on the roof I find is that for some reason it attracts ants. Between the observation window and the insulation board in the spring, summer, ants get in there.
Have the ants chewed into the insulation?
Yeah.
Okay, have you ever tried wrapping aluminum foil around your insulation?
I have, and I have also put duct tape.
And it didn't work?
And that works too, right? So
it did work, you're saying?
It did work, yeah.
Okay, good. Because I'm testing you to see if the things I've recommended to other people are also working for you. And if you had said it didn't work, we would just have deleted this whole interview and moved on.
And start again, find a real beekeeper, right? Yeah, I got you, Fred.
That's all great. So you are thinking about insulation static year round.
I would love to insulate, this is a little plug for all your watchers out there. I would love to be able to insulate this whole bottom box, and just have an insulated bottom box, right? Because I think we're to the point where we realize insulation is probably not hurting anything. And if I'm running a single brood chamber, and there may be some benefit just to have insulation on your round on this hive, but that's for the future, right? That's
we'd like to develop an insulated version at some point, whether it's on our own or partnered with someone else. You know.
Can I show you one more thing about winter or no?
Absolutely.
Sure. Okay. So say you're starting a hive, right? And you started the hive a little bit. You bought a Keepers Hive. It was June or July. You kind of missed the primary flow, or you made a split in June, right? And you're like, okay, well, they missed the primary nectar flow, so I don't have this. You know what I mean? Like I don't have, 30 pounds of honey in my exchange box to drop down, right? So this is what I do. Ready? You probably have it figured out, but I will leave. I will leave my 8 frames in my brood chamber, right?
You want this?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll put my queen excluder back on. I'll put my medium spacer box on. I'll take all my 5 frames out of my medium spacer box. And now I'm emergency feeding basically right over the queen excluder up here. So I'm basically overwintering, and because there's no sense in leaving a 5-frame deep nuke box on the hive in the winter if it's not have anything in it. That's just like makes no sense. So this is the other option is okay, break it down to this, and then put your fondant or put your mountain camp or put whatever right over the queen excluder so that the colony below can feed. And I've overwintered like this too without any problems. Now, which one? Now, if you really want to make, I don't harvest honey out of my brood frames. I don't. So my preference is to take those brood frames and drop them down. But say if you wanted to make an extra 30 pounds of honey out of this hive, you could easily take that exchange box, harvest it, and then sort of, overwinter in this configuration. Again, you're going to have to keep on top of the emergency feed you put in there so the bees don't starve for the winter, but it's a perfectly acceptable way, at least in Pennsylvania, right? I don't know about other parts of the country, but at least in Pennsylvania, you can overwinter with just a single 8 frames in a deep with your emergency feed above it. Not a problem. That makes sense.
Now, the next question I have to ask you is your beta testers are all in Pennsylvania.
Right.
So you didn't send any to Vermont and Florida and Georgia and
No, I didn't.
So,
I don't know how this is going to perform outside of Pennsylvania. I know it's Langstroth. I know it's basically a Langstroth hive. So there's plenty of 8-frame Langstroth. Basically, it's an 8-frame brood chamber, an 8-frame Langstroth. So I can't say with certainty that it would do well in Florida or do well in Vermont, but I'm pretty sure it would. I'm pretty sure.
I personally see no reason why it would not. And one of the things I really like about it as well is you've got that, it's a 10-frame box, but there's 8 frames in it because of the support system that you have on the left there. We know that those narrow channels, those nuke frames that are 5 frames each, are outperforming all of my other hives. Now, I'm on the other side of the state from you. I'm in the snow belt. We get rough winters here. And that configuration is working here. Now, we also know that they build comb faster up there and they store honey quicker in those 5-frame stacks.
They do.
So in a lot of ways, this as a configuration outperforms the standard 8 and 10-frame Langs when we're just stacking those boxes on top of each other. So aside from, we just remove the challenge of the larger boxes, and we also increase productivity. So how high do you end up stacking those boxes through the productive season?
Well, again, I run medium nuke boxes. I mean, it doesn't sound very manly, right? I've got a 5-frame medium nuke box as my honey super, but I'll run three medium nuke boxes above the exchange box. And again, if you want to harvest them frequently, like you said, they'll fill them up quicker, right? So if you wanted to pull them and add them back on, you can do that. But essentially, I have the spacer box, which I'm going to harvest, and then 3 medium nuke boxes above the exchange box that I'm going to harvest. So I'm harvesting the equivalent of two 10-frame medium boxes of honey off this, assuming all goes well, right? I'm not
right.
But that's usually what I'll do. So most of the time, It does get tall. The stack does get tall. So I usually will put these hives on a hive stand that's only about 6 inches high because of that. So I lower my hive stand a little bit because I'm running taller stacks. And I use straps, on all my hives, but I use straps, But yeah, I mean, and then when I go to harvest my honey, I'm only I'm only lifting a 15 to 20 pound box off my hive instead of a 40-pound box off my hive. So it just becomes physically easier to harvest. So
now when it comes time to harvest or remove boxes from the top, what's your favorite method for getting your bees out of your super?
I'd rather not know.
What? Now I want to know. I'm like, what is it?
How about a gentle stream of air?
Do you use a leaf blower? Is that what you're about to say?
How about a gentle stream of air?
Okay, so you blow them out. All right.
I blow them out.
Hey, a lot of people do. A lot of people do.
You can take them out. You can use remember, I'm part backyard beekeeper and I'm part of honey producer and running a lot of out yards. I know there's better ways to harvest your honey if you're, have your 3 hives in your backyard and you use a skateboard or some other way. When you're making a trip to your out yards and you're only going there once every 2 weeks and you need to get the honey from the hive into your truck and try to leave as many bees there as you can. It's a different challenge, Fred. So how about if I leave it like that? There's multiple ways to do it. And I choose a gentle stream of air.
But I do have a suggestion for an extra piece of gear for your, if you're looking at adding options that backyard beekeepers with lots of time on their hands might like, is we really don't have a nuke-sized escape board.
I realize that. Yes.
And I really like, if we're looking at designs that work really well that we can almost model after, the Cirrocell escape board with all its venting and all of its cones is a very good example, but no one is making a nuke sized escape board. And I see the nucleus hives as being something this size and this configuration that you're showing here going forward is going to be more and more popular with backyard beekeepers. So if we had a shim, because again, it could be stored on top, it could pull double duty as something else. But
I use double screen boards on this. We won't have to get into this tonight, but I use double screen boards on this to make splits in June. Really easy to do. And I just leave the at the top of the hive, So
almost like a snow growth board?
Sort of. It's just a double screen board with just one opening, So what I'm doing is I'm just sort of, pulling brood from down here, moving brood up here, putting a queen cell in. And then 3 weeks later, I'm coming back and to make sure that it's a functional new queen with a colony. And I'll just pull, basically, I'm just pulling off the deep nuke box, right? So I'm just pulling off the deep nuke box and I have a new hive. Now, for some reason, the queen didn't take. All I do is remove the double screen board and it's back to the way it was. So I have made nuke size double screen boards to work on this, and it's brilliant. Honestly, it really it's a very cool way to make increases. But since I'm not, I appreciate the escape board idea because I could clearly see how that would be a better way to harvest your honey than what I'm doing.
Okay, you can sit down again. You don't have to. I don't want you to spend your whole night over there.
But yeah, no, it's exciting to talk about, because
I don't know if George is very passionate about this.
Well, and the potential for add-ons for this goes on and on. I saw the video where you pull out your side guards and then they had little hangers on the side of the box. That seems like something you've come up with later. Keeping things convenient and handy. Beekeepers are a sloppy mess in the bee yard. They're all dropping their hive tools. The more moving parts there are, the more opportunity for something to be misplaced. Okay. All right. I see somebody has fixed you up, George.
I fixed myself up.
Okay.
Fred.
And now I know this is late in the game because people are watching this going, what are we talking about? What is this? No, what's the Demaree method in the first place? They're just, it's a new hive, but what even is that for? So if you would just kind of run down the practice of um, decongesting your brood area, transferring nurse bees with brood up and above away from the queen to remove that swarm instinct. And then, of course, what happens? What's the Demaree method, and how did you get from that to this? We know it's to keep from removing these big boxes. You eliminated lifting, but what's the method on its fundamental level? What is the Demaree method of swarm reduction?
Right. So George Demaree was a beekeeper in the 19th century who wrote in American Bee Journal, I think in 1890, some about this method of swarm control. And what I tell people, because it can be confusing, but I tell people basically you're doing a vertical split within a hive. So when the brood chamber seems to be getting full with brood and nectars coming in, hopefully before they start making queen cells, or when there's queen cups and not queen cells, you're basically doing a vertical split within the hive. So at the bottom of where the queen is, you're going to leave the queen and 1 or 2 frames of brood down there with the queen, and 4 or 5 frames of brood you're going to move up higher in the hive. And you're going to put either foundation or drawn comb, either one. Maybe foundation's better. If you have drawn comb, use it down in the brood box. So basically you've given the queen room to lay, and you've basically taken a whole lot of bees out of the brood chamber and moved them up higher in the hive. So the queen, or the bees, I guess the bees, no longer feel like they're congested or that they have enough population to swarm. So the swarm impulse will sort of go away. So you're making a vertical split within the hive. Now, is there challenges for the method? For sure, that go beyond lifting. Lifting's the biggest challenge, and also mentally kind of configuring like what's going where and what stays here and what goes there. This just simplifies it, right? Just like you have 2 boxes. You got the brood box, you got the exchange box. You take 4 or 5 frames out of your brood chamber and move it up into your exchange box, right? So what are the challenges of the Demaree method? The first challenge is when to do it, right? Because if you do it too late, the bees have already started that swarm impulse, and once they get it in their mind, they're going to swarm. It's hard to stop that. So the other problem is to do it too soon, right? Because you're basically taking the brood nest and splitting it into 2. So you're at risk for chilling the queen or having the queen stop laying, and you're also at risk of chilling the brood that move up. So it's that initial timing that becomes really critical about when to do it.
Okay, so that's a good point that I want people to be clear on. How many frames of brood should they see in that box before they go about pulling away any of those frames and moving them into an upper box?
Yeah, so I would say that you should open the hinge roof and take a look at the brood chamber. You should see you should see bees on all 8 frames. So first thing you want to do is you want to see a full brood nest. If you're not seeing bees on the top bars of all those frames, they're not full enough. Secondly, you probably should have about 5 or 6 frames of brood in that brood nest before you do the first split. Because I always say you should move 4. I mean, the nuke box can hold 5 frames, right? So you should move 4 or 5 frames. I think that's a little bit of the art, 4 or 5, 4 or 5 frames up out of the brood nest. So you're leaving 2 and you're moving up 4. Because you want to leave something down there, because the queen still needs bees down there to continue to lay and not to get chilled. So I generally
they need to warm the brood. So when you've got 2 frames of brood, is that a little light considering the size of the box? When the cluster would be on both sides of at least one of those brood frames, and of course those up above can move down. But we've also pulled brood up above that they need to now warm. Right. There as well.
The other advantage of the design, I think, Fred, is that you're dealing with nuke boxes instead of full frame boxes. So the heat's going to transfer a little bit more effectively because your box size is smaller. So I think there's actually less risk of chilling because the nuke size is smaller. The other thing that I've seen which is pretty cool or not cool, depending on what your goals are of the Demaree, is that they don't make emergency queen cells in the exchange box, which is interesting because usually in the Demaree, the bees up at the top, which are now queenless, right? Because you've left the queen down below and you brood up. Oftentimes they think there's not enough queen pheromone and they'll build emergency cells. We're not seeing that. I'm not seeing that in the Keepers Hive, honestly. And I wonder if that is because of the nuke size boxes and not the bigger full size boxes of the Demaree, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right, because that pheromone would be more concentrated in that narrow channel.
And I've seen the benefit of the swarm prevention just as much as with the regular 10 frame box, because people will say, well, is that a good thing? Maybe that's a sign. If you're not seeing emergency queen cells up in that top box, maybe you haven't spread the brood nest out far enough. I don't believe that. You know, I just,
in other words, to alleviate the congestion, that is one of the swarm triggers.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, that's a rabbit hole that we could chat about another night.
Well, no, you've done a good job of explaining this concept, because this is what people kind of need to understand, what that method is, what it was for, and how it's going to reduce swarms. Because let's be honest, I like to do walkaway splits and things like that, but you'll have no honey crop at the end of the year.
Right.
The whole point of this is to keep all your bees, give them the sense of swarming by decongesting your colony, but then having all of your workforce still in the same hive, so that now they're into full-on honey production instead of full-on brood production as they recover from a split.
Can I give you one more idea?
Yeah, give me lots of ideas, George. I'm ready.
You ready for this idea?
I'm ready.
This is I only came up with this because I'm an idea slinger. You know, people may call it other things, but I'll call it an idea slinger. Basically, I sling. Okay. See what sticks.
Yeah.
Since it's so easy to access the brood chamber, right? I mean, we know, right? You just go in there, you access the brood chamber. How about caging the queen?
You can do it.
Yeah, exactly. That.
Okay.
How about that for a swarm control method? It works.
Well, yeah, that's true. It does.
And it's easy to do. You know, it's easy access. You can find the queen. You only have 8 frames to look at.
Once you have but they will, of course, start producing those replacement queens while your queen is caged if you're not controlling the congestion.
Right. You have to go back in a week and sort of take care of that, right? Yeah. It's just another thought out there of what, you know, the whole concept of the hive is easy access to your brood chamber. So all the management that we know what to do and how to do it becomes a whole lot easier, because you can just get into your brood chamber and do it. So that's where you start to run into ideas like, maybe I cage the queen. Maybe it's not that hard to find the queen and put the queen in a cage for a couple of weeks, wait until the goes away.
I will say this, I'm not a fan of putting a cage over the queen on the frame, on the comb. I'm a huge fan of pulling, in that case, that's a double frame, right?
Right.
Sure. I've also got the single version, but that is a huge amount of control, and when you talk about expediency and making the most use of your time, you're not hunting your queens anywhere. You've got all that control. You can have 6,000, new brood in there, and they're all tended to the whole time. So that's excellent management. And by bringing that up, are you saying that that's something you're thinking about adding to your system?
I did it this year on a bunch of hives. So instead of doing the Demaree, I did a Demaree and then I caged the queen. I sort of did a hybrid thing, and I'm just learning, right? So we're always learning, right, Fred? We're always
we're not learning. We're not beekeepers.
Learning, and I know that I know that backyard beekeepers in general want to keep their hobby at backyard level. And surely when you start talking about alternative methods of swarm control, you can go from 3 hives to 12 hives pretty quickly, and not everybody wants to do that. So the Demaree is a great way to avoid doing that, but I wonder if learning more about how best effectively to cage the queen is another way that you can do that, where you can keep all the bees in one box without making increases, because I think people Not
Well,
everybody.
the advantages of caging your queen, first of all, you can also create a brood break. You can remove her on her cage of brood and treat the rest of your colony. I don't know what your treatment practices are, but there are a lot of advantages to being able to do that. Where did you source your queen cage that you tested this year?
Um, I do have the similar cage that you showed, but that's not what I used. I used the 3-inch number 8 hardware cloth, Keepers Hive barn made push-in cage. So
Okay.
I
Oh, so
did.
you did the one that I don't like? What?
I've done the leaf blower and I've done the push-in cage, Fred.
I'm learning about all this for the first time, so don't hold.
You know what I learned?
David, you are in the clear. You are okay. He's doing this behind your back. I'm sure if you saw him break out that leaf player, you'd run up and slap it out of his hand and
You
shut him down.
don't really do media.
So
We
let's talk
don't
about
find video of the leaf blower yet, Fred. I don't know if we'll.
let's talk about how you chose the queen excluder you're using.
The 5-frame queen excluder.
Yeah.
It's a wooden bound metal 5-frame queen excluder. We need the wooden bound to hold it flat. It just
Right.
using a metal or a plastic queen excluder will not give the queen excluder the support that we need to make the design work.
Okay.
So that's
So
why.
did you do any observations on how easy it is for the workers to pass through it? Did you, how did you arrive at the configuration or the specific spacing and everything that you have on your queen excluder?
The queen excluder is a standard queen excluder from a bee supply company, which I've always used. I've always done the Demaree because that's what my sort of mentor taught me. So with running the Demaree, I've always used the queen excluder, and I've never really. That's one of the things I really haven't thought much about, of whether or not the queen exclude. This just design needs a queen excluder, but I haven't really thought much about whether or not there's downside or there's ways to optimize this. This is just a standard 5-frame queen excluder that's coming from a bee supply place.
Okay, and it comes as a nucleus size?
Yes.
Oh, no kidding. That's interesting.
Yeah, there's a small modification I do to it. But yeah, it comes as a nucleus size wooden bound queen excluder. Yes.
Okay.
That may be a rarity out there. So I don't know if right now I'm getting some of the hive components are being made in my barn by myself and Nat and Dave, and some of the hive components are being sourced from a local bee supply company who makes high quality products. So I kind of get the best of both worlds in this. I get really good quality standard equipment, and then I get the sort of modified stuff the way I want to modify it.
Mm-hmm. Now, with all the hives that you've handed out and the beta testers you've got, what kind of honey yields were they reporting to you?
I would say that the honey yields go anywhere between 30 and 60 pounds on these hives. Depending.
Surplus?
There's a plus. I've done over 100 with the one queen hive, so you can push it if you want to push it, but I would confidently say between 30 and 60 pounds makes the majority what the majority of beta testers are saying that they made with this.
That's a lot.
If you can effectively prevent swarming, you're pretty much, and I would say with the Demaree, do I have 100% swarm prevention? No, but I would say up near 80 to 90% swarm prevention with the Demaree method, which is really good, honestly. And if you prevent swarms, you're going to make honey, right? So when you have lots of bees in your hive is going to make honey, and then it depends on how you want to manage your supers to how much your honey you make, So I think and it depends on geography, right? I can have 2 hives managed the same way.
Yeah.
And this hive produces, 60, and this hive produces 30. And and they both got managed the same way, and they both didn't swarm. It's just one area is better this year, just better in general. So there's surely an environmental
Are you running this configuration exclusively now, or are you still
No,
making
it's 50.
comparisons with standard Langs?
Yeah, no, it's a standard, half my hives are this and half my hives are standard 10 frame Langs.
So how does your production compare with the standard Langs?
It's less.
Less production on the Keepers Hive?
Yeah, but I can get 100 pounds on a standard Lang pretty.
Okay. So then how are you preventing swarms on your standard Langs?
Demaree.
Oh, same method. You're just
Same method, just doing the manual labor of lifting all the lifting all the boxes.
Yeah.
Just more work, I mean, it's equally as effective, but again, when you put, you put, bees are going to fill what, if you prevent swarming, bees are going to fill what's over their head, right? So if you ask them to fill a 10 frame medium, they'll fill it. If you ask them to fill a 5 frame medium, they'll fill it. Well, which one's gonna give you more honey?
Well, they're going to fill faster the smaller space. It just needs more work. In other words, you have to be more active about it. So yeah, but
I don't think I could routinely. I'm being honest and totally transparent. Like,
no, that's what I want from you, George. Total honesty and transparency.
I'm as Dave knocks me underneath the table. If your goal is to make 100 pounds a hive, go with a traditional 10 frame Langstroth and Demaree it, right? If you're okay with 30 to 40 or 60 pounds a hive and you want to, lift left, then this is the better option for you. So I think it all depends on what your goal is in your honey production, right?
We do have a 2 queen version that they've got.
Yeah, I saw that too. So that's a honey making monster, right?
It can be for sure. Yeah. So if you want to make 300 pounds of honey, try that out, but that's really, that's another discussion. But I would say on average, your 10 frame Demaree traditional Langstroth is going to outproduce honey wise the one queen Keepers Hive, just largely because maybe 2 reasons. One reason is, and this is just all sort of, me sort of going off on a little tangent. One is that I wonder if the queen, because of the smaller footprint of the hive, the bees don't lay as much a little bit. So I think the total bee population, when you're running a full 10 frame Langstroth that's all the way up high, I think your bee population potential is higher than in something like this that has a smaller footprint. So that's one reason. I think your bee population in a standard 10 frame Langstroth Demaree is going to be higher than this. And secondly, because you're putting 10 frame boxes over their head instead of 5 frame boxes. So I think those 2 factors are going to, but that's a lot of work, right? If you're not 100 pounds, a Langstroth hive is doable, but you've got to be committed to doing the Demaree and preventing it from swarming.
Right. Yeah. Which is that's why I don't do the Demaree method.
Right. Yeah. But a lot of people,
honey is a sensitive subject for us.
Yeah, no, I
we get a lot of flack from people who are like, "Oh, I'm a honey producer. I'd never use that hive,"
right?
That kind of thing. And it's fine. It's fine. It's not who we're going after. But
yeah. So my next question is: with all this control over the queen, how long are you keeping your queens?
The queens last for years.
For you, when do you swap out your queens? At what age? Or do you base it on performance alone?
I base it on, I do a little bit of queen breeding. So I'm actually looking for docile queens. So I tend to, docile colonies, I should say, not docile queens, docile colonies. So I'm requeening based on temperament. So that's if you're nice, you stay. And if you kind of raise a colony that's not nice, you get requeened.
So what's your favorite method for producing a new queen?
Yeah, so I use the 2 queen hive and the cloak board and grafting. So I'm using that 2 queen hive with a cloak board and grafting into that to make my queens. So now, with that said, that's a specialized sort of thing there. But I'm a big fan of queen right starter finishers. And I like the 2 queen for that because you end up making a lot of bees. And I do grafts. So yeah, that thing. Well, not
Do
exactly.
you use this master grafter?
No, Chinese. I'm Chinese. No. Get me the dollar. Get me the dollar Chinese one.
The little plastic one?
Yeah, and then I get out. Don't you get out the 600 grit sandpaper and just find that plastic, put that away. That's not what you want, Fred.
Okay. That's all I wanted to know is if I'm on the right track. I'm throwing all this in the trash tomorrow.
No. It's you do what you do. You do what you makes you happy, right? If
George, it should be clear to the casual observers out there that those are crystal clean and they've never been used. So they're props.
I like the Chinese grafting tool, and I like a 600 sandpaper, right? Because you've seen this trick where you take the grafting tool and you put it against your thumb, and that tip should just bend just a little bit, right? Because you want it to bend, when you hit the bottom of that cell.
Yeah.
So a little 600 grit sandpaper and just slightly sand the tip of that grafting tool. It's like perfect.
Who did you learn that from?
A guy named Hiroshi. So Hiroshi, shout out to Hiroshi. He's part of the CCBA. Hiroshi is a master violin maker. So he's very precise about his tools. So
okay, trivia question.
Oh no, I'm is
the
it
Antonio Stradivarius violin was finished with what?
Beeswax.
Propolis.
Propolis. Really?
You had a chance, George. You had a chance.
50-50 and I got it wrong.
Too obvious now.
Okay. No, but
so you're grafting. So how many queens do you make in a year?
Hundreds.
Hundreds, so you're selling queens.
No, I do it for the club. So we have a queen program within the club that we make. So we're grafting for the club.
What do you mean grafting for the club? You give them away?
No, we have the club has an apiary, right? So
yeah.
We have 2 yards at our apiary. We have an apprentice nuke yard. So we have an apprentice program, which is pretty cool. So the people join the apprentice program, and if they finish the apprentice program and their teacher says they finished, the next year they get a nuke from the club.
Okay.
So we have a nuke yard where we're making so many nukes a year, and then we have a queen yard. So we have 20 divided 5-frame nuke boxes. So we're making 40 queens on a 3-week cycle, and we're selling them to the club members at a discount price. But it's all about education, right? So we have a queen team that's about 15 people, and we sort of make queens for the club members. So we're really trying to promote local genetics and good quality queens. So
and what time? Yeah, what time of year do you do that? When you graft your queens, what's your optimum health, nutrition time of year for the bees to be producing a new queen?
We will start grafting in Southeast Pennsylvania the 2nd to 3rd week of April, with the first queen being mated then the first week of May. Mm-hmm. The optimal and we weigh our queens, so we know that the queen. So we do a 3-week catch cycle on the queens, and we know that the queens on catch cycle 1 are always lighter than on catch cycle 2 and 3. 2 and 3, they're the heaviest, and then 4 and 5 they get lighter again, which is fascinating, right? Because it's all about nutrition, right? So it's all about what's available. So clearly, the best time in our area, at least to get the largest queens, if the largest queens are the best queens, which would be middle of May to early June, would be optimal, right? Right when pink nectar flow is on, pretty much.
Well, now, do you have a second swarm season like we do here that hits about 3rd week of August?
A little bit.
Ours
is like the 1st week of September. Like you get these hives that, for some reason want to take off. I was like, this is the dumbest idea I could think of is swarming in September, right? But they do it, And I always used to say, let's just say, like, yeah, these are. I shouldn't say, Dave's going to hit me, but I was like, these are beekeepers that are feeding their bees, right? It's like they're feeding the bees, so that's what's causing these late season swarms. But no, I had
no.
I had a hive take
it's
off on me
environmental.
this year that I wasn't feeding. I was like, what are you, it's sitting in a tree like 20, 30 feet from my hives. I was like, these are my bees. And it's
And and it'll be an enormous swarm at the
right.
end of the year. What is going on?
Yeah. And neither
So,
one is going to make it, right?
well, I take them on as projects because I like to see if I can get a late season swarm to survive.
Mhm.
But you could fish out the queen and send them all back home.
That's what I do.
Well, then there you go. You didn't lose anything. That's okay.
As I get
So
back
another
to the
question.
box,
I know people are going to want to know this, so I don't know if you guys have worked this out yet. Uh, is there a price point for, your what your basic hive configuration is going to sell for? When will they know if it's available to purchase? And what kind of money are they looking at, do you think?
Well, so basically the way we're approaching it is we're doing the crowdfunding campaign and going to obviously monitor the level of interest and try to figure out a little bit what sort of quantities of pre-orders we're looking at. We're planning to offer pre-orders for the hives during the crowdfunding campaign as like a perk. So we have a plan in place now where, like, if we need to, we can make these at a small quantity and sell them ourselves, as in kind of a bespoke, you could say, handmade manner. Obviously that would be less desirable than us getting a more finished product and shipping it in a larger quantity to more people. So we have the ability to make them at a small scale, and there's a different price point for that. And we're hoping to basically be able to manufacture a decent sized batch of them at a more cost effective price point. I think that right now we're estimating that just for this hive, with no frames and no bottom board, and basically just the modified components that make it what it is. You supply the rest. You pick your favorite components from whatever supply store you like. We're thinking that this is probably going to be in the ballpark of 200 to 250. And again, whether or not it lands somewhere outside of that is probably going to be contingent on the scale at launch. But we have, I've basically, you were kind of asking, like, why do I think I can do this or whatever from a business standpoint. And basically it's like, I'd say that what I know, what I don't know. And so one of the things that I've done is reached out to my professional network and people that I know who have launched other companies and gotten some feedback. And we've gotten in touch with some consultants and some companies that can help us set up the manufacturing and distribution and those types of things. And they're good connections. So we're pretty confident that, once we reach a certain threshold, we'll basically start executing a different plan. But we have a plan where we know we can deliver these hives next year, at a baseline quantity. It's just going to be dependent on how many people watch this video, I guess.
Well, and people are going to want them for spring. They're, this is we're hitting the time of year where, I'm sure, as George knows, this is where we look at all the stuff that we have, think about the stuff we want and need. Spring hits us and catches us off guard. Swarms are the biggest thing that just wipes out. Everybody just loses. You go out there thinking you're going to check your hives, and there's a swarm in this tree and a swarm in that tree and a swarm in your neighbor's yard, and you're too late. So I always try to inspire people to make sure your equipment's ready. And of course, you're going to have to keep up with it. This is a method of keeping up with swarming, not just that, the transparent window, looking at your brood box. These things seem to they catch everyone off guard, but the truth is they're not checking their hives. The weather is still too much in flux to be pulling lids and looking in on them. So we have this now with your hive design. We've got a transparent window. As George said, you can see if all your frames are full of bees, it's time for you to be doing something. So what I'm thinking is people that are interested in a new hive design, people like me, would be looking at this coming spring. So, and that's a different thing depending on what part of the country they're in. So I'm in sync with where you are there pretty much when spring arrives. Dandelions bloom, you got to feel the dandelions, you're about to lose your bees. So do you forecast availability on some level in March of next year or April of next year?
So basically what we're thinking is if we get a certain number of pre-orders, let's say in the range of 500 to 1,000, we're going to try to look at if we think that we're going to have that level of interest, we're going to try to line things up to get those produced as quickly as possible, as professionally as possible, et cetera, et cetera. If we end up doing it ourselves at a smaller scale, it's probably just going to be like, honestly, we were thinking that we might just go in chronological order. The first batch of pre-orders that get placed, they're the first people to get their hives. We crank them out as fast as we can. So some people probably will start getting hives earlier, but unfortunately, yeah, we as far as timing went, it was like there was we toyed with the idea of trying to do the crowdfunding campaign now, basically, and for a few different reasons, it didn't pan out. And so we kind of, I'll put it this way too. It's like with crowdfunding campaigns, based on people I've spoken with, some of the people we've spoken with, you obviously, that is a common problem, is like people placing orders and like, I haven't gotten an update. There's a manufacturing issue, something, and it's a year goes by and they haven't gotten their product. So we were a little hesitant to try to say, okay, we're going to raise money in November, October, and have you your hive by February or March, because if it did turn out that there was a high demand and people really wanted them, and we weren't going to be able to execute on that plan just with what we have available to us right now, we'd be facing potentially a lot of disappointed customers who were like, oh, I wanted this hive, like you said, I wanted this hive for March, for April, and now it's July and blah, blah, blah. So it was a difficult decision, but I think, like I said, I think ultimately for us, just launching this company, launching this hive, getting it into more people's hands, for us, that's a success, because George and Nat have been at this for a long time, and they've tried before, really. Like they've gone to the shows. Some people out there may, if they see the website, they may actually recognize the 2-queen keeper, because that was the first product before the 1-queen keeper. So they tried before, and like we wanted to try to do it right and try to at least go in with setting expectations with people, just that, like, we're going to try to raise as much money as we can so that we can make as many hives as we can, because we hope and we think that there's going to be a decent number of people that would like one, because we believe in the benefits and all of that. So, but we also don't want to tell everyone, like, yeah, it's by, campaign's going to wrap end of February. You'll get your hive April 1st. It's just probably not going to happen. But that being said, we're going to do our best to get more out there however we can for more people to use, like yourself, whoever, like get more people to use it, get more feedback, continue to develop it. Like George mentioned, like, I think there's a lot we could do with insulation. There's a lot we could do with maybe streamlining some of the pieces. Like we absolutely have a minimum viable product. You know what I mean? It's like, it works. Right now, it's very simple to manufacture. It's like some people have looked at it and said, oh, I could make it myself. And it's like, yeah, you could, but it's a fair amount of time. There's actually a fair amount of small pieces that need to be spaced correctly and blah, blah, blah. But all things considered, it's one of those things where, like, you can make it with saws and a drill and glues. So it's like the kind of thing where there is probably going to be future versions of it that have more bells and whistles and maybe have advanced features, but ultimately this is a workable product, and so we'd like to get it out there as is to start and get more feedback. And yeah, that's kind of, hopefully I answered your question. I don't know.
Patience. Yeah, you did. Thanks, David. And George, when people think that that's when they want to use it, obviously we're not going to go tearing into a hive that we currently have in March or April and transfer everything into a new hive design that time of year and risk chilled brood and things like that. So what do you recommend, based on your experience, to be the best time of year to implement a new hive like this in your own backyard apiary?
I will actually put so there's a couple potential ways to start a new hive and new colony in this hive. One is I'll transfer an overwintered nuke into this in the spring. So I'll again make sure I have a solid bottom board on it so it's not chilling, but I'll just put an overwintered nuke into this. So if it's 5/5 nuke. Well, that's 10 frames. I'll put 8 frames in the brood chamber. You with the follower board, like you can limit the size of it. So you could put a swarm, you could catch a swarm and put a swarm in it. You can put a June split in it, pretty much because of the ability to use that follower board and start a smaller colony, and then the overwinter configuration where you can feed emergency feed right in the middle of that box. You don't really necessarily have to start a hive early in the spring to achieve a certain size to survive the winter. Again, I mean, we can spend hours, but the whole concept of you need 2 big deep boxes. Again, it depends where you are, but I've had plenty of hives that have overwintered just fine with 8 frames of bees with enough emergency feed in that medium box. So you could put a hive, so the answer is, whenever you want to start a colony in this, you could start a colony in this. But again, ideally, I'm taking one of my overwintered nukes and that's ready to grow and put that in the spring is ideal, I think.
Okay. So I want to thank both of you for joining me for this interview tonight. And I think you've got a really cool backyard addition to people that want to practice the Demaree method. And I was really impressed with it. I'm also impressed with the amount of time and effort you've done as far as research and development, having your own beta testing group and things like that. And do you have any closing words, some statements you wanted to make, or anything you wanted to touch on before we wrap up?
Yeah, I just hope people get, are open-minded and give it a shot. I as beekeepers, we know what we need to do to keep our hives healthy, right? We know we need to do swarm control. We know we need to do mite management. We know we need to do optimal nutrition, but it's hard. We've all been there, and we all don't feel like at times going out there and tearing apart the hive and lifting boxes. And I can promise you that the design works and that you're going to smile more when you use the hive versus a traditional Langstroth hive. So, we're excited about it, and we hope that people give it a shot and of course give us continued feedback. I have thick skin. You have to have thick skin when you're inventing, because you're gonna hear all kinds of feedback, and that's good, right? Because we want to hear what people think, and we want to hear the success, and we also want to hear the opportunities for improvement. I just hope people take a look and give it a shot.
Yeah, the largest room in the world, the room for improvement. So I have a wish list thing I'd like to see added to it.
Shoot. Yeah.
I'd like to see your solid bottom board be a screen bottom board with an enclosed solid bottom board underneath with a removable tray that I can pull from the back. So it's completely enclosed, but I get that screen.
Right. Now,
removable tray.
You want you want the removable tray, but we don't want the wind and the cold coming up.
You won't, because it's completely enclosed. So
you want to help me design it?
Do I get it? George, do I get one?
Help me design it. You get one.
No, we'll send you one.
I can send you guys out a sketch in 10 minutes, because I know it's what I want on all my hives. It's just, they're just not available. I think part of it is expense, but there's so many advantages to that I just like it. And I use cafeteria trays as my tray to pull out, and I have them on nukes that way too.
They sell those they sell trays for I forget the company that makes them, but they do sell trays that slide into the Freeman bottom boards, right? For the beetle traps.
They do, but they're not enclosed. Like the whole bottom is not enclosed. The tray becomes the bottom. Right. I don't want that. I want the box.
Use the tray, but you could also engineer the bottom to be solid. So you get
right.
Yes, I get you. I'm there.
Right. Okay.
Not hard.
All right. So thanks a lot, you guys. I appreciate you being here. And for those that are watching or listening, please continue watching, and you're going to see the excerpt from the conference at the Pennsylvania State Beekeepers Conference, where we first met and looked at their equipment, and you'll see it in close to tail. So thanks for being with us and for listening on the podcast. And please check it out in the future because we're going to constantly update when the fundraiser will be if you're going to try to get one on your own, as well as we're going to link the YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.
And that concludes this episode of Interviews with Innovators. If you want to see the display at the PA State Convention, I invite you to continue watching for the next 8 minutes. I want to thank David and George for doing this interview and also for this interesting new hive configuration. Please take a moment to visit the description for links and updated information. I'm Frederick Dunn, and I wish you all the best with your bees. Okay, so here we are at the Pennsylvania Beekeepers Association annual convention, and we're at State College, Pennsylvania. And we happen across the Keepers Hive, Langstroth without the lift. I like that. And then there's the website, thekeepershive.com. And today, if you guys wouldn't mind introducing yourselves.
Sure, I'm Dave, co-founder of the Keepers Hive.
And I'm George. I'm one of the co-inventors of the Keepers Hive.
Our third partner isn't here, unfortunately, but yeah.
And who is the third partner then?
Nat Wolf, he's a co-inventor as well. These guys invented it, and I'm helping them bring it to market.
Great. And so where are you out of?
We're out of Chester County, Pennsylvania, southeast Pennsylvania.
Okay. So this is a pretty unique looking nuke combination with a full-size deep, it looks like, at
Correct.
the bottom. So if you wouldn't mind, maybe just run it through and let us know what the features are.
So what we have here, the innovation is basically we have an 8-frame deep single brood chamber with a queen excluder here and the nuke size boxes above. And the innovation is that we can access all 8 frames in the brood chamber without removing or without lifting any of the supers off it. So all the task and all the management that you have to do that involves working with the brood chamber requires no lifting now. So we're going to get into the hive and take a look. So the first thing is we have a hinged roof, which opens really easily. And then you can see a nice observation window. The observation window allows you to see half 4 of the frames in the brood chamber without disturbing the bees at all. We remove the observation panel and the 2 frame guards on the side, and we're into the brood chamber. This is an 8-frame brood chamber. As you can see, the frames sit on the box instead of in the box. So that's the innovation, that the frames can slide out from underneath the queen excluder without removing all the supers. So we'll take a couple of these frames out.
What kind of frames are you using there?
These are plastic frames. Either frame
acorn?
works. These are acorn.
Okay.
Any frame works in this, so whether or not it be plastic or wooden.
Okay.
And you can just slide the frames out from underneath the queen excluder.
Oh.
So no lifting of the supers above to get to the queen excluder. So for us beekeepers who are kind of tired of lifting, or lifting is a challenge, this becomes an option for management of the hive. A lot of people, the first thing they say is like, come on, nothing slides in a hive, right? So what we've done is the frame guards, as you can see here.
You want to hold something?
I'm good. So you can see right there, the ends of the frames are protected from the bees being able to propolis them. And that allows you to slide things inside the brood chamber. So everything that requires brood chamber management, whether or not that be a mite count, whether or not that be a swarm prevention, whether or not that just be an inspection, becomes so much easier to do. So what I'm hoping for is that because we make the task easier to do, we get people to do it more often, and therefore the health of their honeybees, the health of their colony is better than if they don't do the tasks that are necessary.
Now, how long have you had this in use in your own?
We've had this in use for 7 years. So this product development has been for 7 years. There's been multiple prototypes. I run an apiary that has about 70 colonies in it, and about 40 of them are this type of hive. So we know that it works.
Now, is this the first time this has been offered for sale? Or?
We're not even offering it for sale.
You're
right
not?
now,
Trying to promote it for a crowdfunding campaign. Essentially.
Oh, it's crowdfunding, so you're
Yeah.
trying to get kicked off on
We
this.
want to get pre-orders. We want to get just people. We want to show it to people and see what they think, and hopefully they'll see the value in it. And if they like it, we're hoping that they'll take a pre-order in the spring, early spring, late winter.
Okay.
Yeah.
And these are 5-frame nukes, or is
These
that?
are so what we have here. This is a 5-frame nuke. This is a medium. This is
Okay.
a deep, and there's mediums above it. So the biggest one of the biggest challenges with the single brood chamber is swarm management.
Okay. Yeah.
So what we recommend from swarm management, especially for backyard beekeepers who may not want to make increases in their hive, is the Demaree swarm control. And not a lot of backyard beekeepers do the Demaree because of the work that's involved and the complexity
Oh,
of
yeah.
it.
Mhm.
But what we've done is you take your medium supers off. You're getting into spring when your brood is expanding, the queen's laying a lot. You can see that this brood chamber is full. So what we're going to do now is just take 3 or 4 frames of brood out of the brood chamber and put it up here into what we call the exchange box. We're going to take frames out, either foundation or drawn comb, put them down into the brood chamber, and we're going to move brood frames up into the exchange box. So what was a very complex, labor-intensive manipulation now becomes so much easier.
Wow.
And then as soon as you do the exchange, then in the spring you want to start putting your honey supers above. So this hive generally will have 2 honey supers above the exchange box and a super here. So in a season, when you prevent swarming and your bees are healthy, on this hive you'll definitely get 45 pounds of honey. And then in the winter what we do is we take this box, all the honey supers come off, this spacer box comes off, the queen excluder comes off, and this deep nuke gets dropped down for their winter for consumption during the winter. And then in the spring, when the bees move up over the winter and you got brood up here and the queen starts to lay, we just basically move it down and cycle it again.
Okay. Interesting. So you said this is going to be, you're hoping to get funding for this. Does that mean,
Well, so we can make them now on a smaller scale, but we'd like to be able to, obviously we'd like to be able to reduce the cost and reduce the labor it takes to make one. Nothing on it is particularly difficult to manufacture, and also if people already have Langstroth equipment, they can use a lot of their existing Langstroth equipment.
Yeah.
So because, it takes any standard bottom board, any frames you want, most of it is nukes. So the idea is, like, what we're really going to try to sell is this piece, which is modified, but you're taking all standard stuff and modifying it, and then the total cost of a complete kit is going to be more than maybe your average Amazon hive kit. But the idea is, because the management is just so much simpler and easier to perform, and because you can do it from sitting down, it's just over the course of a year, we've had people manage double deep Langstroths and also manage one of these hives. And after a season, they're just like, this was so much more enjoyable, and performed fine. Performs great.
Okay. And so when will the fundraiser kick off?
February of 2024 is the plan.
February 2024. Okay.
We're excited.
This is our first show. Like, we literally, website went live this week. So
great. Oh, the website. So this is early exposure.
This is day 3 of live website. This is our first show, so we're excited to be here. And
well, you know what? Several people came up to me already and asked me to come in and look at this. So
really?
it
That's
was kind of kismet that I was just getting my coffee and you walked over and introduced yourself. So that works out.
Well, we'd love to give you one.
So, all right.
Check it out. Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Any closing words or anything you'd like to share?
We're just here to help people keep healthier bees. I think we all know that we all want our bees to be healthier. We know what to do. We just trying to help people do it a little bit easier and a little bit more efficient. And hopefully that'll be a good thing for everybody.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good sentiment, and I can't say I disagree. So thanks a lot for the presentation. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Fred.